Everybody, it's 7 o'clock. I have no idea. Can you guys hear me out there?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
You can? Wonderful. Okay. No, because everybody's talking in here. But that's all right. That's what we do. All right. Just some quick few announcements. This is our last gathering for the spring, summer. What is it now? I have no clue. It's so hellaciously hot, whatever. So, but anyway, last one before we go for our summer break. We'll be back in September. Speaking of September, I'm still looking for some folks to do Member Mondays. So if you have some ideas for some presentations, you'd like to try your hand at it, you're amongst friends. So, nothing can go wrong. So, AKA help, I need people. Anyway, so if you're interested, if you could shoot me an email, because I am, believe it or not, still organizing that. Like to welcome Julio. Julio is new to our club and he has joined us this evening. So hello. Round of applause from the Peanut Gallery. And we're still looking for a financial secretary. We're still looking for a board member at large as well, I believe. So still looking for fundraising ideas. If you got them, send them. Looking also for alternative spaces for 2027 to hold our little gatherings. So tonight's our competition. I'll let Mike get to that in a minute. We have an outing coming up. Details are in the newsletter. Sylvia put together an outing to Shankweiler's Drive-In. If you're familiar with that, that's up towards Allentown. Okay, so it should be a late afternoon, golden hour, early evening kind of deal. So some interesting photography, I would think. I can't wait to see what you guys come back with. And I have Julie on the Julie, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Okay, Julie, she's organizing an iPhone photo workshop, I believe, in France. I would love to go, but not going to happen this year. But would you like to speak about it real quick?
Sure, I'll give you a really quick plug. It's October 25th to the 30th in a small town called Bassus, which is halfway between Toulouse and Bordeaux, France. I'm working with another woman who has the facilities to house people where I can teach. We'd learn iPhone photography skills, how to use your cameras better. Like Scott Kelby uses only his iPhone now. Dan Burkholder talks about using his iPhone. Rad Drew just taught me how to do infrared on a Zoom workshop with only my iPhone. So there's a lot there. Plus, Snapseed just upgraded to 4.0, and there are a lot of new things in there. And we would learn various stylistic apps to consider for your photography. That would all be in the morning, and in the afternoon, we would go off and do cultural excursions that also function as a photo opportunity. So if you look at the BPS newsletter or you go to my website, juliestaufferphotography.com, you can get all the information there. It's costing 3,300 euros without the airfare. So it would just be a nice fall trip. What else? So look at my website, think about joining. We could use 3 more people to go. That's
Wonderful.
all.
Would you like to do a presentation about it after that? You are a member of presentations. Not sure or anything. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up unless Vince has something. So I'm going to hand it off to him and then we'll get started.
Just very quickly, I had put out a call for those who are interested in going back to the Reading Foundry for a photo shoot. If you were not able to do that, I've gotten a couple responses. Email me if you're interested, so I know whether or not we have enough to make that worthwhile. There will be a sunrise photo shoot in the fall, probably October, at the Green Hills Preserve on a Saturday morning at about 6 a.m. And I will be putting details of a photo shoot on September 26th, a Saturday, about 9 a.m. at the Gruber Wagon Works. They will be turning on their belts and running all of their gear, overhead conveyors, et cetera, to run the Gruber Wagon Works. I was just there last week and had a wonderful photo shoot day. I think that that's it. A couple other ideas in the works for photo shoots. So with that, Pete, welcome back as our judge. And Mike, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Tonight, we're going to be looking at our up close and personal competition. But first, just a plug for the next one, which is October, and that will be monochrome. So check out details in upcoming newsletters. Deadline for submissions on that is October 11th. Tonight, we have the great honor of having Pete Morton as our judge. I talked to him this morning, had a really nice conversation, getting to know him a little bit. He was in a military family, so he grew up in various places all over the globe. He said living in Taiwan really inspired him to get into photography, and then he had a very long career at NIH, and then in retirement, he's really kind of dove into photography even more. He is very active in the Silver Spring Camera Club in Maryland, very active and a finalist judge and for the PSA, does study groups and lots of judging experiences, does Photoshop instruction. And as Vince mentioned, he's judged for us in the past, I believe, in October of 2024. So we'll do what we usually do, which is we'll run through all the images. Pete will give some comments as we're running through the images, and then after that, we'll share Pete's screen, and he will show some further edits and comments on a few images, and we can have a Q&A session then as well. So with that, let's get started. Share my screen here. Okay, does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is Then It Hit Me by James Agudo, and this won first place. So Pete, do you have some comments for this?
I do indeed. I thought this was very clever. One of the things that I look for when I'm judging is the impact of an image. And I can't imagine that anyone would deny that this has impact. It takes advantage of the fact that the theme for tonight is close-up photography. And you can almost feel the baseball about to hit you. Very, very nicely done. This is one that I played with, and we'll look at that a little later.
Okay. Ouch. By Pat Falco. This received second place.
And very good name for it. When I saw this, I found that it was fascinating. I love the concept. All of the needles or whatever we're looking at in the balls make such a nice contradiction in the roundness and the sharpness kind of mixed together. I did find that I had a hard time trying to decide where to look. There was no obvious immediate focus point, but nonetheless, it was quite fascinating.
Okay. Stacked by Wendy Ferrero. This received third place.
And this is another one that when you first see this, it has impact. It's like you're right there. You start wondering what's going on. Are you looking at some cottage out in the middle of the country? The various rings make an interesting, almost a collage, but they create a pattern that's just replicated throughout the image. Very nicely done.
WFIL. James Guido.
And I thought this was quite interesting. I did find that my eye immediately went to the bright yellow, the weight scale. I kept wondering if I'm looking at someone who weighed 790 pounds or 62 pounds. But that didn't really matter. The scale was what I believe the photographer wanted me to focus on. I found that was almost felt like it needed a lot more contrast and perhaps even sharpening a bit. The Belmont and the metal surrounding the scale was quite sharp, and that seemed to be where the camera was focusing.
Okay. Vroom. Pat
And it
Falco. This received honorable mention.
And it took a while for me to figure out what I was looking at with this. The title sort of gave it away as part of a car or motorcycle or some sort of vehicle. I like the lines mixed with the oval rings. I thought that made it quite intriguing. This was another one, though, that I wasn't quite sure where the photographer wanted me to focus my attention. The shapes were wonderful. The lighting was very well handled, but my eyes kept darting around looking for a place to land.
Right, that is Class B pictorial. And now we will move on to Class A pictorial. This is Center of Attraction by Jackie Burke.
And this was wonderful, really well seen. I thought the fact that the insect was almost encapsulated by the large red petal or leaf or whatever it is coming up on the left side was excellent. That almost made a frame for the insect. I'm assuming it's some sort of bee. The the flower that it's sitting on, the tips with the red worked so well with the eyes of the insect. Excellent, excellent image, beautifully seen. I think that this one is one that the photographer could have continued taking dozens and dozens of photographs of.
Emma by Becky Carpenter.
Well, Emma was very intriguing. I thought that the eyes looking directly at me at the camera really made the image. As you know, when there's an individual in a photograph and you can see their eyes, that's immediately where your attention goes. That's very well done in this. I thought that the overlaid texture was, at first I wasn't sure if it was really adding to the image, and then the more I saw it, the more I liked it. It appeared that the photographer in post-processing must have used a mask of some sort to kind of open the overlay of what looked like tiles, so that we could see the person and her face especially. Very cleverly done, and I really appreciate the imagination of the photographer in this. It's an image that I think one could live with quite nicely. I also liked how it was cropped. It would have been very easy to crop this in a way that it didn't feel comfortable with all of the patterns and all of the activity going on visually in this image. The cropping became even more important, and I thought it was done beautifully, leaving even a little room in front of the elbow that's poking out to the left, and room behind the person. Nicely done.
Whirly Bird by Mia Curran.
Really a great subject for a photograph. The various veins in the maple leaf work so well and grab your attention, and they add a dynamic feel to this lovely image. The holes in the object that the leaf or seed rather is lying in add also more interest. It took a while before I really realized that I was looking at something with holes in it until I finally noticed that the stem was kind of disappearing down through one. Well seen, the colors work very nicely together. I played with this one, which we'll visit a little bit later. But I think the photographer clearly wanted me to focus on the maple seed, and it's hard not to. Very well seen.
One Eye, Karen Lay.
Well, Karen, if you're here, it was really a great idea. The colors in this are spectacular, and the flowing lines of the feather really work well. I thought that the almost a starburst of the yellow kind of pulled my eyes toward the eye of the feather, which was I to me that was the beauty of this image. I think that the colors, particularly the red, might be a little saturated, a little too saturated if you want me to be focused on the feather and the eye and the feather. But I thought that the colors worked well together, and the composition in this was quite nicely done. The idea of having the feather emanating from the bottom right corner works really well. It gives a diagonal, and when you have a diagonal of that type in an image like this, it makes it far more dynamic and makes it almost feel like it's moving. Very well done.
Eye Contact, Deborah Lewinson.
And wow, I couldn't quite decide what I was looking at, but whatever it was looking back at me. The insect was just beautifully captured. It looked like it might be a little over sharpened or somewhat pixelated, and something. I found that the white was standing out almost a little artificially. One of the things I would have considered would have been to take the green, use a filter selecting by color, and take that dark green leaf and perhaps reducing its saturation. It's competing a little strongly with the wonderful eyes of the insect. The legs of the insect, when I first saw them, I thought of War of the Worlds. It really was rather fascinating. I think the cropping on this and the use of a black background worked extremely well. Nicely seen and nicely taken.
Blowing in the Wind, Jenny Lodge has received third place.
And I love the feeling of this. There are some photographs that just kind of make you reflect on something you've seen or felt in the past. And this one to me is one of those. I think the idea of the clouds and the sharp clothespin worked just extraordinarily well, but what made it really come together was the inclusion of the clothesline where it was. I thought that if that had been purely horizontal, this photograph simply wouldn't have worked. But the way it is now, it's quite striking. I thought that it was extremely well done. I was very impressed with the fact that the sky had enough detail to provide interest, but it didn't compete with the main subjects. The clothespin, the clothesline, and the item that's pinned to the clothesline still grab all of the attention, and the sky is there and it's not boring. Well done on that.
Lovely when wet. Vince Pellegrini.
Yeah, car pictures are hard to do, and this one is done well. The fact that there are raindrops or dewdrops or whatever we have on the car adds the interest that it needs. I thought that the way the photographer handled the tail lights was just right, and that the color, the brightness of them, and their location in the frame pulls your attention directly to them. After my eyes landed on those, I found that the rest of the vehicle continued to get me to look around and appreciate all the other areas that were there. I would have considered cropping this a bit from the top, uh, not not because it's not an interesting area, but because it's such a large area that's out of focus that it's a little bit distracting that way. But I think it was a great idea. I think the general um, concept of bringing the eyes directly to that red surrounded by the blue worked very nicely.
Bridge over Troubled Water by Lee Reeves.
Yeah, interesting image. I love images of water, and this one was confusing to me. I couldn't decide if the water was flowing downhill and if we were seeing reflections of lights or of something else going on. In the more in the bottom left side, it looked like there was a discontinuity in what we were looking at. I all of that made it quite intriguing. The one issue that a couple of issues, I found that my eyes went immediately to the brightest area, which was right kind of in the lower center, the yellow that looks like a snake with its mouth open. And unfortunately, that area was quite blurry, whereas the rest of the photograph, much of it was very sharp. With that in mind, I might have cropped it differently and just not included that lower portion. Um, or as a minimum, I would have considered darkening the brightness of it so it didn't attract the attention that it does. The the idea, the feeling of the wonderful water flowing down to the left over whatever ridge that is with all of the various patterns was absolutely outstanding. So I think this is a concept well worth continuing to play with.
Dimmed Perception by Angel
Wow.
Rivera.
Yeah, fascinating. The I decided that this might be an old light bulb that had broken. I never did really decide exactly what I was seeing, but it looked like it might be tungsten hanging down. I thought the image was well handled. The depth of field was excellent. The fact that the background has a lot of texture, but is not pulling my attention away from the main focus, the main object, was well done. The When I saw this, I wondered if it might work as a vertical instead of a horizontal, or perhaps it works well both ways. The lighting in this was extremely well done. The fact that we have the dark areas in back and the bright areas in this fixture, and none of the bright areas are blown out, and all of the back has sufficient detail to add interest without simply being pure black. I think pure black would not have worked well in this because the image would have been, frankly, a bit too simple with nothing else going on. So I thought the photographer did well. I especially liked the shadow of the switch on the appliance, on the device, and how the photographer left that as a point of interest. So nicely seen, nicely done, and quite creative.
Double Time by Mike Rumler.
Well, gee, Mike, nice, nice image. The I I found that as intriguing as this was, I kept finding it confusing. Um, and for some reason, my brain kept focusing on it, trying to figure out what time it was, which certainly wasn't what your intent for the image was. But the idea is intriguing. I love the fact that I can see that it's an Elgin National Watch Company, USA. Often, when there's text in an image of this type, the text detracts, but it doesn't here. It actually is something that's, I think, absolutely necessary to make the image work. I found that all of the various dials and gauges, symbols, etc., were interesting, but it was another case of I wasn't sure where you wanted me to look. Um, I didn't play with this one, but it would have been fun to mess around with.
Okay. The Stargazer by Jackie Burke.
And I kept feeling like I was on the Enterprise and back in a sci-fi movie. This was really mesmerizing. The swirls on the right with the light looked like it made the shell appear to be some object spinning in space. The use of a nearly black background with just a little blue added to that feeling so that it was almost unworldly, unworldly, hard to say that. Um, but I really liked the concept that the photographer did in this. This was a very close to winning one of the awards. Nicely done.
Homegrown Blueberries by Mia Kern.
Well, it's very well named. I thought that the idea of having the bowl of blueberries in the background was excellent, especially having them not be sharp so that they weren't pulling my eyes too strongly from the blueberries in the foreground. Those 9 blueberries are obviously what I'm supposed to be looking at. That's what the photographer was setting up the image, I believe, to draw my attention there. And the rest is really something intended to support that concept. I did find that the brightness was a little overdone. I could see the brightness, particularly in the bottom left corner, being much darker, and even having the lighter portions of the 9 blueberries being a little darker might have been a nice thing to do. I wasn't sure that what I thought of the blueberries in the bowl, other than that they gave context. I might have tried to use perhaps a linear gradient to pull down from the top and darken it just a bit so that my eyes went to those 9 blueberries. And I would have done the same thing with the brightness on the left, particularly the bottom left.
Paulina
Yeah.
by Becky Carpenter.
Yeah, what a great idea. I thought that the challenges that I would have found in this were how to get the person to have their face at just the right distance from whatever the glass is. I thought the colors in this worked beautifully, but the thing that impressed me the most was the choice of the cropping. The fingers pull my attention. First, when I first saw it, they pulled my eyes out of the frame. Then later, when I came back and looked at it again, I began to see the fingers almost pointing in, so that my attention focused on the face itself. I would have liked to have had the face just a little more contrast so that I could see a little more of it, but the creativity was outstanding. And the whole idea is one that I really encourage you to continue playing with.
Underwater Smoke by Karen Lee.
So I showed this one to my grandson, and his reaction was similar to mine when I first saw it. It was, wow, look at those colors. What is it? The flowers, particularly the tulip in the foreground, was excellent. And I'm assuming that that's either that or the yellow flower right above it is where the photographer wanted me to focus my attention. I did find that I missed having something in the image that was perfectly sharp. It's good to play with out of focus portions of an image, but it's also good to have something that you can anchor your eyes on and see something that is sharp. The closest to that was the petal from the flower on the far right, the yellow flower. And my attention keeps going there, and that's not the point of interest. So this one I found somewhat confusing.
Okay. Raindrop by Deborah Lewinson.
Great image. The feeling of rain, the feeling of water. This photographer captured that beautifully. I it was only later when I came back and looked at this a second or third time that I wondered how we got all of the ripples when the drop of rain hadn't hit the water quite yet. But I decided I needed to get over that. It's really quite a nice image. It's one that I played with a bit, and I think that the photographer clearly wanted me to focus on the raindrop itself and then have the ripples in the water start to pull my attention into the rest of the photograph. The shape of the ripples do a wonderful job at almost circling the raindrop and holding your attention in that area. Very nicely done.
Threaded by Ginny Lodge. This received second place.
And an excellent image. I thought that the sharpness of the needle and the thread going through the eye of the needle just worked beautifully. The only couple of things kept it from being first place, one of which was I found that the top of the spool of thread, the blurriness bothered me. My eyes kept going to that. I would encourage the photographer to darken particularly the whiter areas of blurriness. I debated about whether I should see the point of the needle or the bottom of the thread, or at least one end of the thread. And I decided no, I thought that that wasn't really necessary. And I really admired the idea that it was such a strong diagonal with the needle. I did wonder around the center of the needle. It did not look as sharp as the two ends did, and I didn't quite understand why that was. It's that's not a depth of field issue unless it's a crooked needle, which I don't have any reason to believe. But I did wonder about that quite a bit. But beautifully conceived and very nicely taken and set up, which I assume you did.
Forgotten Idea. Angel Rivera has received honorable mention.
Yeah, I thought the title of this really described what I was seeing and what I was feeling when I saw it. The image really captures something that's tells a story of something that's not working, did not work well, did not go well, something that's decrepit, falling apart. And you start wondering, what am I seeing and what's going on that led to this? It was to me an excellent idea. I thought the cropping was good, although I debated and actually played with this a little bit to crop a touch off the bottom, because I didn't find that the dark area on the very bottom was useful, and there seemed to be a little more at the top than we needed, and there's nothing of great interest there. But yeah, it tells a story, and it was just very well seen.
It's About Time by Vince Pellegrini.
Excellent. When we talk about close-ups, when we talk about macros, a lot of us think about clocks and the wonderful feelings of all of the gears and cogs, and this image just emphasizes that to an extreme. The parts that grabbed my attention, I assume, are the ones that the photographer wanted me to see, and that was the round cog right in the middle with the what appears to be a spring pointing to it from the right-hand side of the image. Once my eyes rested there, I started to move around and see all the rest. I liked the fact that the cogs on the far left are blurry, particularly because they're right next to the bright edge. If those had been sharp, it would have been a strong competition with the center. I would have considered darkening that area on the far left, and perhaps even the top a couple of inches from the left has a brighter object that's looks like it's cut off. I find that a little bit distracting. Bright objects are always going to attract attention, and if they aren't obvious what they are, cutting them off makes it feel awkward somehow. But beautiful clock and well seen, and I love the fact that we're looking right at the center of it. Nicely done.
Eye on the Prize by Lee Reeves.
And an eye it is. This is when we talk about impact and emotion of an image, this one has both of those. It also tells a story because the reflection in the eye is intriguing. It's not just the radial lines of the iris that pull your attention right to the center where it's totally black, but the view outside what appear to be windows at a completely different level of interest. I thought that was excellent. The fact that we've got a totally black center very, very rarely works, but in this case, it seems to. I would have been tempted, particularly on the top edge of the black, not to have it quite as sharp because that loses its effectiveness of being an actual eyeball. That portion just isn't that sharp. But the composition is beautiful. The colors work extremely well together, and the whole image tells a fascinating story.
Okay. Bubblicious by Mike Rumler. This received first place.
Yeah, wonderful image. And the depth of field in this is so well handled. I thought that the blurriness starts just where you would want it to. It's sharp where the bubble is, and it's sharp through the eyes, and then it gradually starts becoming a blurry image. The colors in it work very nicely together. I thought that what I'm assuming is a flower that it's on, the colors of that were perfect for this. The yellow that's kind of going up to the top from the right side of the insect as we look at it. I would have considered darkening, especially the top edge of that a little bit, because you don't want to pull away from the beautiful insect that you've captured. But clearly a well done image, and one that I would strongly recommend printing, framing, and hanging on your wall.
Okay. That does it for Class A, pictorial. Now we will move on to Class B, nature. This is Unfurling by Wendy Ferrero.
Leaves of this type, particularly when they've got something like the dark green portion, are fascinating to take photographs of, and having the water on them, whether it's natural or sprayed on, really adds to the image. One of the things that I found most interesting was how the veins of the leaf pulled my eyes down to the dark object in the leaf, which I'm not sure if that's a stem or what that is, but it doesn't really matter. The those lines are, to me, what make the image really work. I would consider cropping a bit off the bottom and maybe even a little on the top. I think the clear focus of attention is the dark object on the left side, and I would do all I could to further emphasize that. I believe I played with this one a little bit, so we'll see it later.
Okay. Oop, sorry. Silent Visitor. Pat Falco, that's received third place.
Yeah, very cool. The insect, the position of the insect and the angle of the camera shooting up from the bottom makes this a very unique image. I thought that the legs and the antennae really pulled my attention right into the body of the insect itself. The eyes grabbed my attention, and they were really different from the rest of the image, which is what made the eyes so eye-catching, for lack of a better term. I thought this was extremely well seen. I would consider adding a little bit of contrast to the insect itself, and I think we'll see that when we look at some other works that I played with.
Clematis by John Rhodes.
Yeah, clematis is such a fascinating plant. Beautiful concept. The heart of the clematis is just a real work of art in nature. The the colors the photographer captured were excellent. They all work so well together. I would consider cropping this really much tighter than this. I think that the center of the clematis is really where the heart of the image is, and is the part that, at least to me, was by far the most appealing. I did find that the brighter area in the top left was something I would definitely have either cropped out or eliminated somehow, and perhaps even the bright green leaf on the right side. But we'll play with this a little bit later when we get to that portion of the evening.
Okay. Eye of the Owl by Kate Spillane, that's received first place.
Yeah, Kate, beautiful job. The feathers are sharp, the eye is sharp. It's got everything that I want to see in it. The way you cropped it was wonderful. I'm glad you didn't put the eye in the direct center, and it's almost impossible to look at this image without your eyes going straight to the owl's eye. I thought your work on this was exquisite. I especially liked the fact that you managed to keep the texture of the feathers as distinct as you did. That was really well done, and this whole concept was well seen. You didn't overdo the what could have been done with the eye. When I played with it, that was the first thing I did. I think the professional term is I screwed it up by by overdoing the eye, but we'll see that later.
Okay. I Wished for Rain.
Yeah.
Pat Falco, this received second place.
Yeah, this was wonderful. I thought that the inclusion of the drops and the feathers of what I assume is a dandelion, although it might be something else, I don't know. Just worked beautifully well. The stems leading to the seed pods of the dandelion um, kept grabbing my attention, and they're beautiful. I thought that the angles, the motion, all of the various lines accenting the feathers and the water drops made this really quite a spectacular image. It's one that I played with a bit because I wanted to see if I could make the what a, I'm not sure what to call them, but I'll call them feathers because that's what they appear to be. Make them even sharper and stand out even more along with the water drop. Beautifully done, and the composition is just wonderful.
Thistle by John Rhodes.
Yeah, such fascinating. The the fly and the ants is, I think I would have called it the fly and the ants, no doubt about it. The ants, to me, really make this an interesting shot by just having the fly, since it seems to be almost merged with the thistle bud. Um, it just wouldn't have worked. But the ants add a huge amount of interest and almost makes it a story. Very interesting, very well seen. I played with this one as well, and my goal was to see if I could further emphasize both the fly and the ants, and we'll see how that went.
Cactus Star by Kate Spillane. This received honorable mention.
Yep, a very well done image. The depth of field in this worked extremely well. It's obviously an image that the viewer is intended to appreciate the center of the flower. And the ways to do that are to make that area sharper and also brighter. And the photographer did both of those, whether it's in post-processing or at the time of the image taken, I don't know. But the fact that it falls off into darkness on the edges is outstanding. Very nicely done.
Okay. And that wraps up Class B nature. Next, we'll move on to Class A nature. This is A Rose by Any Other Name by Mia Kern.
Mia, it's a beautiful rose. I think the colors in this are rather spectacular, and I love the fact that I can see the outlines of the petals so well. My only concern about this is that I have seen so many beautiful rose pictures. I really look for something that's somewhat creative, somewhat different. And you did a great job with this image, but I encourage you to find either a different angle or an approach to make it stand out from other beautiful rose shots.
Okay. Fragile Endings by Angel Rivera.
And the darkness of the bee in this, particularly the front area, concerned me. I really wanted to see some detail in the head of the bee, and I just couldn't. I like the fact that I can see the dandelion and the sharp portions of the dandelion that the bee is on, and the legs of the bee are quite sharp, but it my eyes tend to go to the eyes of an insect, and I had a very hard time focusing on it because it was both dark and hard to identify exactly where they were. The wing was nicely handled. I liked the light reflecting off of it, but it really needed some different post-processing on this one.
Holding Fast by Jackie Burke. This received third place.
Yeah, it took a while for me to figure out what I was looking at on this, and once I did, I was amazed. I still haven't completely identified what it is, since I can tell that we're looking at what appears to be a caterpillar of some type holding onto a stem, and that portion is just exquisitely done. The black hairs, or whatever they're called, just stand out magnificently. As I started to look at the rest of the image, I saw the slightly darker portion that was down below where it's holding on, and thought, there's the caterpillar. And then I noticed what's behind that dark area, and all of it, the green with the small orange portions. And so I never did quite decide what I was looking at, but I did decide that it was really nicely done, beautifully seen, and the angle for taking it was really well done. It's different and impactful, and both of those make for a wonderful photograph.
Okay. Open Wide by Karen Lee.
The idea of focusing on the center of a beautiful flower is excellent. I think that this was a wonderful choice of a flower to do that with. I found that I would like to have it focused even closer. There is so much white in the petals surrounding it that it's hard to continue looking just at the center. I also wondered if the center could be just a bit sharper. I played with this one a bit, so we will see it again later.
Okay. I See You. Mike Rumler received honorable mention.
Yeah, this one was great. The position of the insect, the position of the petal, that he's standing on, and the wonderful red behind it is excellent. I found that I kept going back to this to see more and more of it. It's one that I like the previous one I mentioned. I would definitely consider having this printed and hanging it up on your wall. I would do something about the green portion on the left side, particularly the top left side. You can't crop it to get it out because you need the complete antenna, but you could certainly select it and darken it significantly, and perhaps even reduce the saturation of the green. We need that to be not nearly so prominent. The brighter area in the center of the flower to the left, as we're looking at the insect, that really didn't bother me. That felt very natural, and it was a nice balance, frankly, to the insect itself, so that we had the two somewhat brighter areas balanced against each other, creating a very nice composition. Beautifully done image.
Okay. Solace by Vince Pellegrini.
Yeah, this was interesting. Frankly, I really wanted to like this a lot, and I kept coming to it and seeing it again, and it just, after I saw it the first time, it just wouldn't hold my attention. And I think the reason for that is that the out of focus, the bokeh, being so bright and so prominent almost throughout the image, kept my eyes moving to areas that weren't very interesting, particularly right below the curved leaf. Those areas were just a bit too bright. A great idea, and the leaf itself was wonderful, but it didn't quite work for me at least.
Okay. Who Are You? By Lee Reeves.
A great title. I like this image. I love the idea of seeing the eyes of a bird, and particularly this one has such a nice beak showing in the image. I wondered if this would work better with the background being somewhat darker. The brightness, particularly in the bottom right and top left, that kept pulling my eyes and competing with the L. It would be so easy in post-processing to make some of those changes that I really encourage you to play with this. I think it has a huge amount of potential.
Baby Dragonfly by Deborah Lewinson.
Yeah, very nice. This was an image that I liked a lot. I particularly liked not just the baby dragonfly, but the fact that we've got a gradient in the background moving from the brighter area on the right with the green back toward the left. I thought that was nicely done, and it added a great deal to the image because the background could have been quite boring otherwise. The leaf in this was necessary, but I thought a bit brighter and perhaps more saturated. It felt brighter than the dragonfly itself, perhaps because it was far more massive. And I found that kept pulling my eyes down, and the dragonfly itself is so wonderful. So really nicely captured image. And I would encourage you to continue playing with this in post-processing.
Okay. Morning Ablutions by Ginny Lodge. This received first place.
Yeah, gorgeous, beautifully done. The sharpness of the areas, the legs, the wings, and the drops of water were wonderful. It's not just a nicely captured image, it was a well seen image and well processed in most aspects. I thought that the cropping was especially clever. Most people, I suspect, would have tried to include the entire insect. And in this case, I think the rest of it would have been more distracting than useful. I would have liked to have had the eye of the insect a bit sharper, but it works as it is, particularly with the small, what appear to be hairs, being so sharp. But the drops of water, particularly the water on the insect's back and wings, just are really well done. Nicely captured.
Okay. Prismatic Plumage by Jackie Burke.
And it's no doubt a close-up. Well, well done on this. The flowing feel, particularly from the left, flowing up back to the right and up is something that I really like. The the colors all work very nicely together. I did find that it felt a bit confusing because there was so much going on in the image. Um, I I wasn't quite sure where my eyes could rest. I kept going from the wonderful swirls on the top left and then down to the orangey area in the bottom right corner. Um, I think this could be modified a bit with playing with the lighting, but the sharpness is well done and the concept is excellent.
The Churning by Peggy Carpenter.
This I tried very hard to get into this image. It kept hitting at me the fact that it's sharp on the bottom left was great, and I wasn't sure what the purpose of the rest of the image was. I found the uh, the fact that the from most of the right side, particularly the upper right side of the image, seemed to be less sharp, blurry, and nothing that really held my interest. My interest kept going to the bottom left, um, in particular because it was both sharper and a very high contrast in that area, which again will grab your attention and hold it. So I think that this could possibly have worked with a rather major cropping to see about cropping off almost the right half and a little bit of the upper portion of this. But I love waves, and I think playing with the idea of waves and rushing water is a great thing to be doing.
Standing Alone by Karen Lee.
Yeah, Karen, this was so nice. This is one that when I looked at it, I kind of just my breath came out and I just relaxed. It's rather spectacular. The pastel color of the flower is magnificent, and the white surrounding it really lets it stand out. I love the fact that the I guess a petal, the white petal on the bottom left is sharp and very little else is. And that sharpness gives a very nice balance to the pink petal. Uh, I found that to me made the entire image work as a really nicely composed photograph. So well done with this. The brightness perhaps was a little intense on some of the areas. I found that the as I saw the brightness, particularly the top left third of the image, I think that could have been darkened a little bit. Perhaps a bit of a carefully done vignette might have helped that. But gorgeous image and one that I could easily live with.
Ice by Deborah Lewinson.
I kept seeing a face, a head in this, and it was not a pretty head. But it was the contrast in this to me was excellent, and that's what made the image work. I thought the black, whatever it is sticking up through the ice. Almost felt like a spine coming up into the head of this creature. Very clever, very well seen, and well processed also. The background was handled very nicely. It has detail, and this image works as a monochrome. The fact that it's a monochrome helps keep the attention on the ice itself. If there were color in the background, I would find it very distracting.
Foreshadowed forest in a maple seed. Virginia
Yeah,
Lodge. This received second place.
yeah. To me, this is really the heart of a maple seed. And it's captured beautifully, and the background offsets it magnificently. It's there's very, very little that I could recommend to do to this. I think that it's excellent as it stands. The choice of the blue background really works well. You might play a little bit with the contrast of the leaf itself, just because the veins are so spectacular and obviously a real point of interest, but it's well seen. I think that the cropping is just perfect, and the flow of the veins really make this feel exciting.
Captured by Vince Pellegrini.
Yeah. Spider webs and what gets caught in them are really fun to play with. And this is well done. It's the plane of focus is just right to emphasize the spider web, and the object that it captured, whatever that is positioned nicely. I found that the plant in the top right uh, a bit distracting. It kept pulling my attention away from the object in the center, which is where I assumed the photographer wanted me to look. But the whole idea was well done. I would have also considered there's a diagonal coming down behind the object that's been captured, coming down from the top left down to the bottom center. And there's a bright area right behind the captured object, and it would be nice to darken that a little bit so that it didn't compete with the wonderful hairs of whatever it is that's captured.
Gotcha by Lee Reeves.
Yeah, wow, what a capture. The timing on this, however you did that, was just amazing. I think the inclusion of the bird's feet or foot rather was a wise decision. It was good to have the bird anchored on something. I would have loved to have had two things on this. One would have been to have the insect sharp, um, which may or may not have been feasible. And the other is to be able to see the bird's eye a bit more clearly. I think also you might consider darkening the rock that the bird is standing on, but the timing of the capture and the shutter speed you chose, really well done.
Within the Drop by Angel Rivera.
And the drop was wonderful. I thought that it was really mesmerizing to continue looking at that and to try to try to identify exactly what you're seeing as reflections within that raindrop or water drop. The cropping of this was good. I would have loved to have had a different depth of field. Um, the uh, the portion of the plant that's going up toward the left, top left, from the stem being so blurry and so centrally positioned bothered me. I also would encourage to for something like this on the very left side. It appears that there's some sort of light vertical, almost a pink color that I found distracting. I love the water drop and what you did with it. And I think if you could, to focus even more closely just on that, could make an incredible image.
Spring Potential by Mike Rumler.
Yeah, fickle ferns are tremendous. And this was nicely handled. It was very close to an award for this one. I love the background. I love the fact that it was cropped the way it is. The background is not black, and it's also not at all distracting. I found the brightness at the upper portion of the fiddle fern a little overwhelming. And there were portions, particularly that little piece sticking up at the top, which is so prominent, didn't look perfectly sharp. And I found that bothered me. Probably because it's so apparent as it sticks up against the dark background, but nicely seen, and the entire idea of capturing the fern this way is excellent, very creative.
Okay. Blue Poppies by Becky Carpenter.
Yeah, this is another situation where the center of the flower is just incredible. And it's also one where I think that the center of the flower is the picture. I think that the photographer did a magnificent job having that in focus and having the appropriate depth of field in this image. I would encourage cropping this tremendously so that all of the red and all of the green that's behind the poppy is not nearly as prominent in the image as it currently is. This was a photograph that I think you could play with and have something really beautiful coming out of it. So well seen, and I again encourage you to continue working on this one.
Yeah. Fly Away with Me by Mia Kern.
I found that the colors in this were all so intense that I had a really hard time continuing to look at the insect. And it looks like it's a spectacular insect with its wings raised in such a grand position. And I think the background with the all of the lines seeming to point to the insect work really well. But the red all around, particularly at the bottom, I found just grabbed my eyes and wouldn't let me spend any time looking at what I think is the center of interest in this. So a great idea, a beautiful insect to have captured. I think that you're in the right place at the right time, and it almost works perfectly, but we've got a little bit too much of the red, particularly at the bottom.
Dancing by Julie Stoffer.
I did keep seeing the skirts flowing from the dancer. That was wonderful, and the title really captured that nicely. The the flower itself, I assume it's a poppy of some type. Gorgeous. I love it. I found that the bright green, particularly on the right side, was a bit too bright, and down below the green was a little too saturated. It was an image that I wanted to be somehow a little different because it's a beautiful flower image, but I continue looking for some originality in flowers. This is close to original because it appears to be upside down, which I thought was a good move. But there were several little things that concerned me, like the background, and I wanted a bit more creativity in this one.
Misty by Julie Stoffer.
This one is really nice. The pastels in this work magnificently. The image to me is clearly you see I guess 3 iris blossoms. The only thing that bothered me about it was that I hated the green flowing over those iris blossoms. That didn't seem to feel right. I wanted to see them in their entirety, and they're sharp. They're in the right focus, and they're almost in exactly the right location in the photograph. You could possibly crop a little bit on the left, but I understand because of the clump of flowers in the middle left, you didn't want to cut those off or cut them in part. I would have liked to have gotten rid of the portion of the flower that was on the left that was cut, but I think this was so close to being an award-winning image. I really like it.
Okay. And that wraps up our competition. So now I'm going to stop sharing, Pete, and if you want to share your screen and run through some of the edits that you had, that'd be great.
Sure. Give me a second here. And let's start with Class B pictorial.
Okay.
And let me get this set up and then we'll begin. All right. So this image, this was then it hit me, is one that I thought had wonderful impact. And I thought that it could even be stronger to take advantage of this stitching on the ball. And so I did this to it. I decided you could go even closer than you had it. So I went from that, and I didn't like including the stitching in the bottom right. So I went directly in and went straight for the stitching just to see if that would make an image by itself. It almost looked like a plant to me. So let me go to the next ones. And if the photographer is here and has comments, I would love to hear them. And yes. So this is ouch. And I did a little bit with this one, not a great deal, but I'll go from the original, which is here, and here's the edits. And when we discussed this image, if you recall, one of the things I mentioned was that I wasn't sure where to look, and I wanted some place that was emphasized, and it seemed that this yellow ball was the obvious place. And so I put a vignette on it to slightly darken the rest of the image and leave the yellow ball quite bright. At the same time, I increased the contrast somewhat, and I thought that seemed to help make the needles, or whatever they are, appear even sharper. So once again, from that to that. So not a great deal of change in that. Were you going to say something, Mike?
I just I like that edit. It definitely draws you to the center of the image.
Yeah. And let's go to the next ones. So next is stacked. And this was intriguing, but it was almost too uniform. I mean, each of the ends of the logs is different, but they're all about the same brightness and same texture. So I wanted to see what we could do with that. So I darkened some and I brightened a few of them, and it made it go from that to that, which I thought seemed to hold my interest a little longer. Any thoughts on that?
I think it almost emphasizes the S shape kind of going on in that kind of center left a little bit with your edit. Yeah.
So let's see. So next I played with the scales. And as I said initially, I think the center of the image is where I want to focus. And I had a hard time with that because it was somewhat blurry. I also found that this area in the top left was detracting, and I didn't see any value in it. So I cropped down out of that. So in this, I left the center as the center of focus. I sharpened it about as much as I could. And let's see. There. And I left the wonderful metal, or what appears to be metal around it, nicely sharp, because I thought that that added a lot. So you can see a rather significant change in this one, I think. So let's go to the next. And I think that's all I did for that category.
Okay.
And let's go to Class B nature. And let's actually start over here. So, yes, this is our silent visitor. And here is the original. And I think when we discussed it, I mentioned that a bit more contrast might be interesting. So that's about the only change I made to this. I thought the fact the photographer had found such a great position for the camera, and I thought the background worked really well. But I did think that the whatever it is, moth or whatever, seemed a bit washed out. And so adding a little bit of contrast seemed to help that. So let me get rid of that and we'll go to unfurling. So I like this image a lot. But as we mentioned, I thought that the interesting part was this dark green area. So I wanted to see what I could do to emphasize that. And one of the things was rather significant cropping. I saw the advantage of having the bottom, but I didn't think that it added enough interest to the overall image to keep it. So to emphasize this area, I cropped that and I changed the lighting and the contrast a bit. So if you see the contrast in the veins here is actually quite good. I just added a little bit more to it since I saw that as pulling the viewer's eyes toward this center of focus in my mind. So let's see what we've got next. The clematis. So this is the one that I thought the center was so spectacular. And so I basically made the center the entire picture. I cropped rather significantly. And I also sharpened it, if you notice when we go in, so that it really, to me, grabs my attention and holds it. And I liked having some of the seeds or whatever these were around it, but I especially liked the fact that we're surrounded only by the purple petals of the clematis, as opposed to the green and the light green, etc., that kept pulling my eyes away from the beautiful center. And this is the one that I said I probably screwed up, because I thought it was such a gorgeous image. And I think I probably took it a little farther than I should have, because to me, it now looks somewhat unnatural.
Yeah.
So this is an excellent example of really messing up a beautiful image. So ignore that one. Uh, this one I thought was just wonderful. And I wanted to emphasize the structure, the petals on the daffodil, and also emphasize the drops of water. So I did this to it, which, let me go back, went from that, and particularly in the kind of this upper center, I wanted that to be sharper and have more depth to it. And so I played with that a bit to see what I could pull out. And I also did just a little bit of cropping on the right side, if you'll notice. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I like it. I think I actually prefer the original as just
Do you? Okay.
like the feeling that it gives. I see what you're going for, but I feel
Uh-huh.
like the overall feeling of this is just that early summer morning or spring morning feel
That's true.
to it.
It has more of a dreamy feel to it.
Hmm.
And let's see. Then I did something with the thistles. And tried to bring out the fly and the ants. I thought the ants were so critical to the image that they really needed to stand out.
Now, are you primarily doing sharpening in Photoshop or do you use some other program?
Um, I like Photoshop somewhat, and Topaz I use a good deal. Um, Sharpening in Photoshop is usually I don't do that with sharpening. I usually do that with uh, texture
Mm.
and some of the sliders that let you handle um, the contrast. And then after doing that, taking it into Topaz Photo can do wonderful things.
Mm.
And let's see, that's all of those. Let me get rid of these. And let's go to Class A pictorial. So let's start with this one. I like this a lot. I I especially like the red coming up, surrounding, almost framing the bee. And so I tried to emphasize that a little bit, um, and ended up with this. So if we look at the two, there's the original. I did find this area, um, I didn't feel that that added a great deal to the image. Um, I may have removed a little more than I would normally have, but I wanted to emphasize the bee and this wonderful petal coming up. And next, let's look at Emma. Emma was spectacular. And I wanted to see how it would look with her eyes even more dominant. So I went from that to that, basically just emphasizing the eyes and the face a little bit. I frankly, I like both of them. I like this one as well as this one. They're a little bit different. I did crop a little bit at the top just to pull her in to make her even more the center of interest. And let's go to Whirlybird. So this I liked a lot. And I wanted to bring out the seed and particularly the veins in the seed. So I did that to it and still left the stem going down through the hole. But that went from that, and I wanted this to be a little sharper, at least appear a little sharper to that. And I found, to me, I liked the feeling of these darker colors kind of in the mouth of the whirlybird. I thought this made a rather spectacular image. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay. So let's go to Raindrop. So I love this, and as we discussed before, the interest is the raindrop itself. So I wanted to emphasize that even further. And I made it a bit more of a panoramic because I found that the portion at the bottom didn't really add anything to it. It needs the waves, the swirls that are surrounding the raindrop, but the raindrop needed to be very dominant. And let's go to this one. Yeah, fantastic image. So I just pulled it in closer, mostly by cropping. I did a good bit of cropping, like at the bottom and some at the top, and played a little bit with the lighting. I wanted the background to be a little darker so that the broken light bulb would stand out even more. And since the topic was close-ups, I thought that this was definitely a close-up. And let's see, I think that's all I did in this category. Oops. And I only did one in this one. And that was the original. And this was the one that I thought the center was just spectacular. And so I pulled it in some. I got rid of a lot of the white petals. And I added some contrast and sharpening to the center so that I was trying to make the center really the image itself. From there to there. And then I ran out of time.
Pete, that seems to be a common theme that you've mentioned as far as really kind of zoning in on what the center of attention is in an image. Do you find that across the board in photography, or did it come more to the forefront with something when we're talking about close-ups?
I think it's important when you're taking a photograph to stop and think, what do I want the viewer to see? And probably 75% of the time you want something that's the center of attention. But 25% of the time you don't. Other times you want a feeling, a mood. It might be a dark, haunting image, or an emotional one. And those, particularly if you're dealing with portraits, you're typically seeing if it's a close-up of a face. The eyes are always going to grab the viewer's attention. So you've got to make sure that you do a great job with the eyes. And that includes helping the viewer continue to look at the eyes. Everything you can do to make the eyes stand out without looking unnatural seems to work. With nature and landscapes, it's often a bit different. Landscapes, you can have beautiful landscapes with magnificent reflections in the water and not have a single point of interest. But when you're processing it later, you want to decide, what is the most appealing portion of this that I want them to spend the most time looking at?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you want to start thinking of things like vignettes and making sure the center is, or the center of interest is not necessarily the center. In fact, it rarely is sharp and has excellent contrast without being artificial. I find that the secret to really doing great post-processing is time. These I didn't do what I'm about to encourage people to do, which is I do the post-processing and then I come back a couple of days later and look at them again. And inevitably, you say, oh my God, I should do this too. And I think that that's something that needs a lot more attention by most photographers.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Taking the time and letting it sit for a while and coming back to it is really important. Sometimes it's like, you just look at the same thing too long, you start to not see things.
Well, when you come back and look, you're looking more as a viewer of the image instead of the one working on it. And that's when you say, oh, the viewer's going to look at this and see these things.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Pete. Goggleworks or online, does anybody have any questions or comments for Pete? See in the chat, it looks like hang on.
Yeah, I see them. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to thank you so much for coming and judging.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have wonderful images and clearly great photographers.
Very proud of this crew. We'll just put it that way. I have nothing else. Did anybody else have anything in here they wanted to say? No, everybody have a wonderful summer and we'll see you in September, just like the song. Okay,
Thank you very much, Pete. Appreciate it.
Sure.
not
Bye,
singing.
all.
Have a good time, everybody.
Good night.